Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I believe you had an awesome week. Welcome to the Skyline Show today. I am Sally Atieno. I'll be your host.
And I'm Lucy Mjomba, the counselor.
So before we jump into our today's topic, we had two questions from last show, and we'd like to tackle them before we go into our topic. So there's a question that someone asked, and it was how to get in touch with your conscious.
Well, thank you, Sally. How has your week been?
I had an awesome week. Very busy.
All right. Awesome. And I hope all of you had a beautiful week. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I want to begin by answering a question by one of you. You're asking how you can get in touch with your unconscious.
Unconscious.
Yes. So basically, as we talked about the id ego and the super ego last week, I think I keep mentioning the unconscious and things that are hidden in our unconscious that cause us to behave in a certain manner. So basically, how to get in touch with your unconscious, it's not an easy thing. Okay, there's so much in our unconscious, so much. That is why we say in psychology that we don't dream. When you sleep and you dream, it's your unconscious talking to you and telling you something. So basically, how we get in touch with it is by allowing ourselves to think through whatever it is that is going on with us. Because if somebody asks that question, maybe there is something in particular that is bothering them, and maybe they wanted to understand why. So when you begin to focus on that particular thing, whether you'll be talking to somebody, a professional, or whether you'll be writing it down, and you allow yourself to go down to the root of that particular problem, then you'll have dug it up from the unconscious. Because basically, whatever is stored in the unconscious is something that has happened to us already, maybe even as children, but it is buried in there. We don't give it attention. And many times, it makes us behave in manners that we are not very aware of, as in we behave in certain manners because of behaviors that were developed because of whatever was stored in our unconscious. So yes, you can be able to reach it by following through with your thoughts, allowing yourself to feel whatever it is that you're feeling and understanding why. Because maybe I'd like to give an example. For example, maybe you find someone who, for example, doesn't like to sing. And every time we ask them why they don't like to sing, they say they can't sing. So if they wanted to understand why they keep saying that they can't sing, we ask them to, we allow them to dig deeper into their thoughts as to why they believe they can sing. You might find such a person telling you that when they were growing up, people told her she didn't have a good voice. So it is something that is buried underneath there. They're not really aware of it, but when they begin to search for it, then they're able to find it.
So you're telling me, because I love singing, but I can't sing. So if I dig deeper, I can sing.
What I'm saying is you need to find out why you think you can't sing.
My voice is ugly, but...
All right, that's the thought right there. Wherever it is that thought came from, what makes you think that your voice is ugly? You must have heard it somewhere. Somebody might have said it so many times that you began to believe it. So that is what happens. So when things are said to us so many times, as children, we begin to believe those things. And when we believe those things, they create certain behaviors. Which is why in our previous shows, when we were talking about parenting, we kept telling parents not to label children. Yeah. If you tell your child you look like a goat, by the time they're 8 years old or 10 years old, they begin to view themselves as a goat. So they will grow up not having confidence in themselves because somebody somewhere told them that they looked like a goat. Okay? Yeah. So these things are hidden underneath in our unconscious. And I don't know, I keep doing this because I think I'm imagining it is inside. Yeah.
You won't believe when I was growing up, I was told I have an ugly smile. And it took me years to actually believe I don't have an ugly smile. So that's a good point.
You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you so much. Someone also asked discuss more on rationalization.
Okay, rationalization. It's a defense mechanism where somebody creates logical excuses for something that they don't want to face. I'll use maybe an example again. a child fails in mathematics, and because the fact that they have failed in mathematics hurts them, they create a logical excuse for it. They say, my mathematics teacher hated me. You know, or for example, maybe you go to hospital and you have been told that you have a certain illness, maybe it's a terminal illness or something. So you go back home and you start creating excuses as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You say, no, it's because maybe your leg is aching. You say, it's because I walked for too long. Your head is aching. I didn't sleep too well. So you keep creating something that makes sense to you to deny whatever it is that is actually happening. That is how we use rationalization as a defense mechanism.
Which is the same as making excuses.
Yes, it is the same as making excuses. But remember, at this particular point, you're trying to convince yourself. You're trying to convince yourself because, you know, how this thing works is that pain is so personal. Pain is so personal that you're not just trying to convince other people. You're trying to convince yourself because you don't want to give yourself a chance to feel the pain. So you're creating all reasons to avoid the chance that you could actually face the truth of whatever it is that is happening to you. So you create that excuse and you give it to people. Most of the time we'll tell people, you know. And when you find somebody saying something too many times, it's important for us to just ask, why are you saying this so many times, you know? You might find somebody telling you, I'm okay. Okay, I'm okay. And why are you telling yourself, why are you telling us you're okay? Probably it's because you're trying to convince yourself that you're okay because something is not right with you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I believe the 2 questions have been answered to your satisfaction. For this show, we need more questions. Just send in your questions. If you feel like a topic wasn't expounded well for you, please send in your questions. We're about to take a very short break, and when we come back, we are going to discuss on our today's topic, which is grief and stages of grief.
Sometimes life can feel challenging, empty, or stressful. We have so much going on in our heads, it's easy to feel disconnected. 5 ways to well-being are simple things we can all do to help us enjoy life and be kinder to ourselves. Just taking a little time out for yourself and taking notice of the simple things can make a huge difference, helping you feel more relaxed. Connecting with others can be daunting at first, but it's worth it when you meet a friend. Learning something new can help build your confidence and get you involved in something you've always wanted to try. Even small acts of generosity can activate the reward centre of the brain, which reduces our stress levels and even helps us live longer. Simply moving your body around has so many benefits. When you're active, your body releases chemicals in your brain which make you happy. They also help you concentrate, feel and look better, and sleep better, which is pretty great.
Into our topic today, and the first question is, what is grief?
Well, grief. This is a hard topic to discuss, but I will begin by defining grief in the simplest way possible. And I would begin by saying that grief is simply a period that you go through after you have lost something. It is a period that is not stated. It is not 1 month, it is not 2 months. We don't know how long it takes. It depends with different individuals. But it is that period that somebody is dealing with the loss of something. It could be the loss of a loved one, which is the biggest grief, and it is the grief I think we talk about most. Then it brings in a lot of emotions. It brings in a lot of pain, which is what we were discussing last week. So it's more of a continuation. So grief basically is the emotional reaction to loss. And contrary to traditional belief, we don't just grieve when we lose loved ones. You grieve when you've lost your phone. You may not be aware of it, but you grieve. We grieve when we've lost a job, or when we lose property, or when we lose a relationship, when we go through divorce, when we go through something that we had and we suddenly don't have it, we go through the process of grief. Maybe you are healthy and suddenly you've been told something is wrong with you and you need to go through a certain series of treatment and everything. You lose your health, so you go through the process of grief. So yes, grief is that. And another thing that I would like to say about grief is people handle grief in different manners. Yeah. Grief brings a lot of pain. It has it's like it carries an umbrella of emotions. So many things happen to an individual when they are grieving, and you realize that these emotions can cause somebody to behave in manners that they are not aware of, or that are different from who they actually are. And as I said earlier, it can lead to depression and other things. So grief is really, really huge.
I think I'll ask you that question later on, after this. But before I ask the question, are there stages of grief?
Yes, there are several stages of grief, but maybe before I go into the stages of grief, I would like to really just explain to all of us and to people some of the things that can happen to you so that you can realize that maybe you're grieving. Yes? Okay, so basically, when we lose a loved one, for example, that is the biggest kind of grief that we face. And sometimes people will come and they will tell you, pole sana, everything will be okay. People will come and comfort you. And most of the time, immediately after the burial or everything, people go. Life moves on. But now you are stuck there. You're there and you're supposed to move on with life. And because we have never really allowed ourselves to openly deal with these things, you find yourself struggling alone. I was telling someone recently that when you have a friend who has lost a loved one, it is your duty to actually pray with this person for not just the first month or second or third. Take a year, take 2 years, because people grieve even for 7 years, even for 10 years. People grieve for as long as they are not able to handle that particular loss. When right now during Corona season, many people are grieving a loss of their livelihoods, but they are not aware that it is grief. You know, you lose your job, you lose your house, you lose everything that you ever worked for, and you are supposed to just go on with life. It is not possible to just go on with life. It's important for each and every person to understand that people go through a lot of pain when they are dealing with loss of any kind, apart from the loss of a loved one, which we have clearly stated it's the heaviest. But even when you lose property, you go through stages of grief. And when you go through these stages of grief, because as we discussed in our previous session, we are not wired to handle pain head on. We find ways of covering it up. And how we do that, you find that our bodies sometimes, our mind finds ways of even gratifying the desires of the body just to avoid dealing with the pain, you know. This is where you find somebody who is going through a difficult time, running to alcohol, maybe. They end up doing things that they would never have done when they were in their normal state. Like you find people, teenagers, young people going into premarital sex, you know, even unprotected for that matter, or even protected for that matter, it doesn't matter. Just casual sex, and they snap out of it and they realize, oh my God, what did I do? Kumbe at that particular point, they were avoiding so much whatever it is that was hurting them and everything that was going on in their life, that they gratified a desire of the body to avoid whatever it is that was going on emotionally. So we find sometimes people falling into very, very deep places because nobody has understood that this person might be behaving like this because there's something major happening in their lives. So as a society, as counselors, as people, it is important for us to embrace that when somebody has lost something, for example, maybe their house burnt down, you know, this person has lost everything. And the way we show sympathy as people is we give. So I will bring you my clothes. I will bring you the sufurias. I'll bring you all these things. But every time we receive that, we are reminded of what we lost, you know. It is a good way of doing it. We have to do it anyway. But this person, more than anything, needs a place where they can actually talk about what they have lost that they held so dear. People grieve phones, you know. Right now your phone gets stolen and you'll feel so sad, and you'll start remembering, oh, my phone was this, my phone was that, you know. And
Especially
it is just a phone,
card.
you know.
The memory card.
Yes, the memory card. Oh, yeah. So when you are attached to something, anything, and you lose it, then automatically you go into that process of grief.
Maybe to say something that I usually come across, it says, you never know what someone is going through, so just be kind. It's just simple like that. You might be working with someone and they're actually grieving, like something so heavy, and then you just start insulting them, you know. People like that. And I believe being kind would just help, even if they're going through something bad and someone was so kind to you and just walked up to you, is like, you look smart today. Just help a little bit. Yeah, so we need to be advocating for kindness out here. Before Lucy tells us, not before, Lucy is going to tell us the stages of grief. And how many are they?
Well, we are going to discuss 5 stages of grief. 5 stages of grief. After the break.
Sometimes life can feel challenging, empty, or stressful. We have so much going on in our heads, it's easy to feel disconnected. 5 ways to well-being are simple things we can all do to help us enjoy life and be kinder to ourselves. Just taking a little time out for yourself and taking notice of the simple things can make a huge difference, helping you feel more relaxed. Connecting with others can be daunting at first, but it's worth it when you meet a friend. Learning something new can help build your confidence and get you involved in something you've always wanted to try. Even small acts of generosity can activate the reward centre of the brain, which reduces our stress levels and even helps us live longer. Simply moving your body around has so many benefits. When you're active, your body releases chemicals in your brain which make you happy. They also help you concentrate, feel and look better, and sleep better, which is pretty great.
With us, I am really grateful that you are still with us. And please send in your questions, because the only way we'll get to connect with one another, with you guys, because this is a safe place. This is a safe place we are creating. Although we are virtually, we are trying to create a safe place where you can ask questions. Feel free. You can use an anonymous account or just a pseudo account. Just ask questions. No one will judge you. It's very safe. And Lucy is going to tell us what are the stages of grief right now.
Okay, thank you, Sally. So we are going to discuss briefly the stages of grief. There are 5 that we are going to talk about today. And the first one is denial. 80% of the time when someone hears bad news, the first thing that happens is they go into shock and they don't believe what is going on. So automatically the defense mechanism of denial takes in because we don't want to accept that fact very fast. So shock comes in with denial, and during this time somebody doesn't want to believe. They want to tell themselves, no, this news is probably wrong, and tomorrow there's going to be different news. In case of maybe poor health, they'll just say maybe my results were changed, maybe these are not my results. In case of a loss of a loved one, they'll just say this person will probably call me tomorrow and they'll be okay. So that is the first stage of grief. And there's no telling how long this will take. Most of the time, when we've just received the news, there is a lot of confusion. So denial comes in to protect you from that actual shock, that actual acceptance, that the very first hurting yourself too much. So it comes in to really just allow a softer landing of the news. The second thing that happens is anger. And in this case, I want to use the case of a loved one. Many times, and I'm not talking about a week, when you lose a loved one, these stages don't necessarily take place during that 1 week. That 1 week, they may all take place, but again, even after the burial or the send-off, you might begin again, okay? Because now you're living your life. Now you need to live through it so that you can overcome it. But again, what happens during anger is when now you begin to get angry at either the person who has died. You get so angry at them. Why did you leave me? You know, you find people crying and they're talking to the dead person. And then, mbona uliniacha? Why did you leave me? Did you see I had this? Others would get angry at the doctor who handled the situation, you know. There's always a lot of blame, yeah? The doctor didn't do things right. They didn't know what was wrong with the nerve. They delayed here or that, you know. So you find that this anger is always addressed at somebody. Others would be angry at God, which is okay. Many times we are told that it is not okay, but it is normal to go through that. And when you feel like you're going through that, don't beat yourself up too much, because when you're angry at God now and you go to God and talk to him, is likely to help you calm down, yeah? So let's not just say, no, don't do this. It's okay to converse with God about these things. So you find another person be really angry at God. Why did you take this person from me? You know, this person was this to me. So they'd get angry. Others would even stop praying. Those who would pray before, they would stop praying because they don't know how to communicate to this person who has taken their person. Others would be angry at their ancestors even. I remember, I'll use my own example. When I lost an uncle of mine who was my mentor, I was very angry at my dad. My dad had died like a number of years earlier. And when he died, this man became like a father to me. So now when he died, when this now second person died in my life, I felt like, why did you take your brother? You know, you left early and now you've taken the other person who now took, like, tried to be a father to me. So I was really angry at my dad. And I realized that I wasn't really angry. At some point I realized it was just a way of dealing with my pain. Okay? So you realize this anger is also a way of dealing with it. You need to blame somebody. So sometimes you'd find people who are grieving being irritable and being angry at people around them, you know. They just need to blame somebody. And then the third stage, we talk about bargaining. When we are bargaining, this is the time we start talking about the what ifs. What if we had done this? Yeah. What if we would... and bargaining sometimes comes along with some guilt, you know, where you're feeling like, I wish I had done this more. I wish I had told this person that I loved them. I wish I had done this or that or that. So the bargaining stage is where you're dealing with almost accepting, you know. You're at that place where you've realized this has actually happened. You've been angry, and you are at that place where you're thinking, maybe if I had done this. And now you know that brings guilt, yeah? You begin to think, maybe if I had gone to hospital a little bit earlier, they would not have discovered this disease at this particular stage, you know? So the what ifs brings also the issues of guilt. So you find that people who have lost loved ones, they end up feeling so guilty at some point, and it eats them up. Because when we watch, most of us have watched movies, and we find people from the West, they would go to the grave and talk and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. It's a good healing process. It helps you to heal. But unapata, in our African setup, yeah, we don't do that. I think if you did that, people would think, hey, okay, is this lady okay? How is she going to a grave and talking to the grave and everything, you know? Because we do not understand that it is okay to actually find a way of dealing with these emotions. Because if you feel going there and talking to this person in courts will help you, it is okay to do that. Because sometimes you're carrying a guilt that is not even necessary, you know. It's not necessary. There was nothing you could have done, but it happened, but you're feeling like maybe there's something that I could have done. So bargaining comes with the what ifs, and the what ifs comes with the guilt. The fourth stage is depression. This is where now you've realized there's nothing I can do about it. This thing has already happened. Now, I need to live. I need to live. But now you're also feeling hopeless. You're also feeling like it is not possible to survive. You're also feeling the actual pain. Now the pain is coming and you are crying and you are weeping and you're locking yourself in the house and you're actually dealing with it. You're going through depression, and it doesn't necessarily mean, sometimes you don't go through it like in the manner that I'm talking about. Sometimes it is silent. You start lacking sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't want to eat. And because we have also not allowed ourselves to bring these things out very clearly, you might not understand why you're going through what you're going through. But many people would tell you, they cry themselves to sleep. Crying maybe for someone who died even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you know, because they've not been able to deal with it. So depression may take long. It all depends. And then the fifth stage is acceptance. Now, when we say acceptance, we are not saying that now you are healed and you are okay. No. We are saying acceptance comes in when you have cried, you've been angry, you've done it all, and you are realizing this has actually happened and I need to move on. You begin to have a bit of hope at least, and you begin to look for options of how can I move on from this. In case of loss of livelihood, for example, you begin to think, maybe I can start this business, maybe I can do this. You begin to have options for life. And again, acceptance is not something that happens overnight, or it's not something that takes 2 minutes or 3 minutes or anything like that.
Listening to you, I just realized I went through all the 5 stages. Maybe the 5th one I haven't gotten to it yet, but I've gone through all the first 4 stages when I lost a loved one, and anger was there. I got mad at God. I was like, no, you can't do this. You don't bring someone and then you take them. You know, in your head, you're like, it's not yet time for them. Things were getting better. They should have, stayed a little bit. The bargaining part, I had to come up with the whole story. I was like, where's so-and-so? So-and-so lives abroad, but they always come once in a while. I go see them so that you don't feel like you don't have them with you. So listening to you, and I didn't know that there were actually stages. I just knew someone dies, you don't know how to deal with it, and it's not actually stages. You just deal with it. And I'm not personally, I'm not a good griefer. Like, at grief, this is my 9th year grieving the same thing, and it's been 9 years. For someone else, like, you should move on by now. It's gone. It's not easy like that. The people assume that if you lose someone, you are given a timeline, like 2 months or 6 months for you to stop grieving. You can grieve as long as you want. Is that allowed? Like,
okay, I do not want to say that you can grieve as long as you want, or whether it's allowed or not.
Yeah.
Loss of life is something that is inevitable.
Yeah.
And many times we have not been able to go through the stages and be able to move on, at least maybe because we didn't have the right help. And especially in our setup, we don't talk to children about grief. Many times when there's a loved one that has passed on and they have little children, those children are not told much. Yeah. They just see what is going on and their pictures in their mind about whatever is going on. They're not given a platform even to cry. Sometimes even when they're crying, we tell them, don't cry, it's okay. Of which, when they're crying, they're bringing out all the pain. They're bringing it out. They're expressing themselves. One of the ways that we can be able to deal with those stages is by expressing, having a platform where you can express yourself. I cannot for sure tell you, Sally, that there is a way you can deal with death in a manner that you don't remember the people that passed on. No.
There is
You
no
learn
formula.
to live with it, but without it affecting your life. Then we can say you've completed the stages of grief. And by the way, these stages don't necessarily follow sequence. And you can finish one stage and still go back to it. You know? You can finish one stage, you can be at the anger stage and think that you've overcome it, but then you can find yourself going back to it. So what we can do maybe as a people is to create more platforms for people to really just talk about what they're feeling, and to know, for people to know that it is okay to feel what they're feeling at that particular time. Because if we don't create these platforms, then people hold on to that grief for so long. Because sometimes, again, we begin to convince ourselves that letting go is now actually losing that person. You know, you find people holding on to a person who went, like passed on a long time ago, and we don't want to accept and move on because we feel like we'll be failing them. You know, and that is a valid feeling, but it is not a true feeling. Because one of the things that I have learned through life is that when somebody passes on and you lived with this person, there are things that they taught you. There are things that you learned from this person. Those things you don't lose. Those things you cherish. And you don't have to hold on to the grief of that person to have those things. You know? You can let go, because I am 100% sure if that person was to be asked, they would say, please live your life. Life is for the living. And I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm trying to be as sensitive as I can be. But anyone who has left their loved one behind would not want their loved one to live in grief for 10 years or for 20 years as you talk about it. It is my desire that you can be able to come to a closure and be able to let go so that you can now have a life of your own. It doesn't mean that you lose those people. You'll not lose the memories of the people that you love just because you've begun to live your life, you know? Yes.
Just an impromptu question that just came in my mind. In an African setting, men are not. I'm not saying men are not allowed to cry, but most of them don't. In Skyland, do you receive males who are grieving and are just they openly come? I'm like, I'm going through this and I need help, and they just let loose and cry and seek help. Do you find that situation at Skyline?
Yes, absolutely. Because we create a safe environment for you. It is very important for each and every person to understand that male or female, we have emotions. And these emotions, if they're not given a channel to come out, they become a pain that can cause even... These are some of the things that are leading to suicide. Because our society has raised our men in a manner that they do not express themselves. They do not talk about their feelings. But when they go to a professional, it is a place where they feel safe. They are 100% sure that this person is not going to tell anyone that I cried. So it is the task of any counselor to be able to make this person understand that this is a safe place and they can cry and it is okay. And it is okay for men to cry. Even if you don't want to cry in front of people, go hide yourself and cry. Because if you do not cry, then those emotions will stay in there. And pain has a way of leaving if you cry it out, you know, or talk about it. Find that one person. It's important to have a person that you can talk to, a person that you can talk to about anything, apart from God, that is. Because, yes, God is very, very important in our lives and we can pray to him. But it is very hard for God to come and sit with you like this and tell you cry, you know. But you can have a friend, you can have a mentor, you can have somebody to whom you can trust and to whom you can talk to and you can cry with.
Something maybe I'll leave with you guys with. I've always believed that crying, I don't know if you've been in a situation where it rained so heavily that when you wake up the next day, things were washed away. Yeah, it just carried everything. I don't know. I've been in such situations where it was raining so heavily the previous night, and we woke up and Mama Kibanda's is gone. The trash that was laying around there was cleared off. So I believe, to me, crying are like rain. It's like rain that is heavy, and its purpose is to clear a path. And our path here is our heart. So when you cry, you are clearing your heart. It's like you're relieving yourself of a heavy burden. It will not necessarily mean that you will not feel the pain anymore. But at that particular moment when you cry, look at it as rain, washing down the dust, the trash that was accumulated at a particular area, which is your heart, and it is taking it away, washing it away to the other side. So cry. You're allowed to cry. Like Lucy said, it's not bad to cry. Yeah, even kids cry for a purpose, for you to hear, for you to know that something is wrong. So cry, and seek help. At Skyline, like Lucy is saying, they create such a safe place for anyone to just. We pop in anytime we want to pop in, or there's a time limit to come at Skyline.
Okay, before maybe I talk about how you can come to Skyline, maybe I'd like to say something briefly to everyone who is watching and listening concerning grief. Grief is a really major thing. It's not, we are not downplaying it. We are not saying that you can just wake up in the morning and you are done with it. We are saying it's really heavy. And what we are saying, even as you encourage us to cry, which is a good thing, let us cry knowing why we are crying. Because sometimes you can cry and wake up with the same pain. So if we can just cry knowing why we are crying, if you've lost a loved one, why are you crying? Are you crying because you're hopeless? Are you crying because you've missed this person? It's okay to allow yourself to cry with the purpose of moving on from there. Because if you don't question yourself as to why you're crying and allow yourself to think through whatever pain that is pushing you towards that crying, then you'll stagnate at your grief, you know. So it is very important. And I'm not asking anyone who has lost a loved one recently to start doing this, yeah? Because it is a process that sometimes goes on naturally. I don't know, wherever it is that you are in your grief is okay. Know where you are and allow yourself to be where you are. Allow yourself to feel it fully. If you are at the place of anger, allow yourself to feel that anger. If you are angry with God, sit down and talk to God and say, I am angry because of this and this and this and this, and see how it feels. Because now if you are angry and you're not bringing it out, then it makes you stagnate at that place. Okay, then it's okay for us to let go of of loved ones. It's okay for us to let go of properties that we lost. It's okay for us to let go, because when we let go, then we get hope for a new beginning. And letting go of loved ones does not mean we don't love them anymore. It does not mean that we don't want to have their memories will always be in our hearts, you know, and everything that they taught us is what lives with us, you know. So it's okay to let go of them. It's okay to cry at that point of letting go of them. It's okay to go to that grave and cry there and talk there until you feel relieved. It's okay to do that. And if you feel that you can't do that because the society is going to judge you, it's okay to talk to your family about it. Another very important thing is, when people are grieving as a family, we should not always assume that we will be at the same place at the same time. A mother would be at a different place than a son and a sister. Everybody is at a different stage and everyone is dealing with it differently. So one could be angry, and because they are expressing their anger on their siblings, you might find that these other ones are not understanding what is going on. Let us all understand. Let us be as empathetic as we can be, and let us realize that there is hope and there is a God who actually heals. There is a God who actually heals. So now I want to talk about Skyline. Yes. Skyline Center of Personal Development. We do counseling, even grief counseling, and you book for a session. We are doing online sessions. We are doing physical sessions. We are doing sessions as you please. If you want a female counselor, you get one. If you want a male one, you also get one. We are doing even groups. Just reach out to us. You have our contacts. They are always on the YouTube page and Facebook pages. You can reach out to us. We book you. We will be able to help you and to work with you. And it is my prayer that this evening has been helpful. And the things that we've talked about, I know it is so little, but we'll continue talking about them. Send in your questions so that we can answer them in the next Sunday as we talk about other things. And I'm really looking forward to the next session.
I wouldn't be more grateful than to just thank you for tuning in and staying with us all through the session. The topic was kind of a little bit heavy. It was very heavy, and this is what we do. We bring the heavy topics, talk about them, try to lighten you, and just walk with us through this journey called life. Thank you so much. See you next Sunday, same time, different location though.
See you next Sunday.
Good night. People say hi when the show is over. The first usually turns to the guest and they laugh a little bit.
I have a maker. He formed my heart before even time began. My life was in His hand. He knows my name.